What is up, guys, and welcome to Build. Today is the last day of the Corolla build. I was going back and looking over this whole build and realized that it's like 15 or 16 episodes long, which is crazy. That's a really long build, which I did not think was going to be the case, but it ended up needing a lot of work. And I am so stoked with how this thing turned out. We took this car that literally did not run. We had to push it into this garage and made it into something that runs great, that looks awesome, the body is straight, the rust is gone. I mean, we've really done a huge amount of work to this car, and it's finally the last episode. Now, I'm gonna keep driving this car, like, personally, so I'll keep working on it. There's still some interior stuff I wanna do. There's still some comfort type things that I wanna get taken care of, but as far as the major build, this is it. This is the last one. And for you guys that have been watching, you know that there's one thing we've been waiting on for so long to come into the mail, and it finally came. I'll show you, check it out. This is our new fender flare. We had to get new fender flares for the front because the 4-inch ones that we got originally just weren't wide enough. I'll show you the difference, hang on. This is our original 4-inch flare, and then this is our new flare. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but this one is 1 inch wider. So we went with a 5-inch flare for the front, and there's a reason for that. The wheels weren't clearing and actually ripped this one apart right there. Just wasn't big enough. The front wheels stuck out further than I thought they were going to. And when you put these on to make the kind of wheel opening match, since we had to cut so much material away, you really have to stretch it, and when you stretch it, you lose some width. So instead of that being a 4-inch fender, it was actually more like a 3.5 inch, which just wasn't gonna do. So we've got 5-inch fenders now. I think they're gonna be big enough, I hope. It's so huge, it's a big boy. We're gonna stretch these, we're gonna put them onto the car, and we should have a completed car today. So what has to get done today? Fenders, we've gotta dial in our stance on the front, and we've got to put on a few finishing touches, and then we got to drive it. God, I'm so happy this thing's done. This is great. It has been a very fun build, but we have another one coming, and I'm ready to get started. All right, let's go put this thing on. This is the nerve-wracking part. This is the way that didn't clear last time with the 4-inch flare, is this angle right here. The tire wants to touch it and it wants to rip it off. Hopefully it won't do that. Still grabbing it. I think what I'm gonna have to do is lower this car down. I'll leave the fender on and see as I lower it more, does the tire camber in? Worst case scenario, I have to get some camber plates, which puts this video behind, which is a bummer. Best case scenario, I get enough camber out of it when I lower it to make it clear. If these tires were stretched, we'd be in business, but the problem is this wheel is pretty narrow, so you can't really stretch these tires much. I mean, I think it's a 195. Yeah, it's only a 195 on here, but you do have a little bit of ballooning around the wheel, and that's what's catching our flare. So in a perfect world, this would be like a 9-inch wide wheel, like it probably should be, and we just put a 215 on it or something, 225, and it'd be good. Maybe even a 235, but this is not that world, so we have got to figure this out. Hopefully lowering it fixes it. Let's find out. Ugh. So my ideal ride height for the front end of my cars typically is like 4 to 4.5 inches, which is by no means like slammed, but it's enough to get you like looking like your car is really low and still be able to drive pretty solid, pretty decent. This one right now sits 10 inches off the ground, or 11 almost. At its lowest point, we're at, 10.5. Now we're not gonna drop it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches because we've already lowered it a little bit. But it would be just too hard to drive, and I think it would drive really awful. What we are gonna do is we'll lower it another 2 and see what that does, see how it looks, see if it puts us in the right spot. So as far as height goes, we have a ton of adjustability with these ground control coilovers. You can see we've got them run all the way up, and that actually dropped the car a little bit when we did that. So at a very top, we've got maybe a 1-inch drop on the car. We're gonna go down now, I think 2 inches. Part of me just wants to run it all the way down and see what we're dealing with. Let's drop it 2 inches, oh. Well, okay then. So 2 inches is almost to the bottom. That's a huge drop. But we're gonna go for it, and if nothing else, it'll be entertaining. All the way down. We'll go 5 threads to the bottom because I'm chickening out here. Go check the other side. So this is why coilovers are great. You can really dial in your height. I almost think I'm going to have to put some limiting straps on this though, because obviously that's a ton of travel downward. It's not going to be anywhere near the same upward. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That was an accident. About 2 3/4 inches from where we were. I would call this slammed for the sake of the exercise. So now you can see fitment looks a lot better, but it's still got that like poke. It's actually pushed up against the flare right now. Let's see if we can adjust that out somehow. What would make this whole thing so much easier is a set of custom wheels. Because right now I'm literally building this to the wheels. You know, instead of ordering a set of wheels that just fits the setup that I have, I'm building my body kit or fenders, whatever, to the wheels that I have. And that's the cheaper way to do it, but you have to go through some frustrating stuff. Should have got the camber plates. Ground Control asked me if I wanted them, and I said no because of the budget. But I'm wishing I would have got them, because it would be so easy just to kick that thing in, wheel clears, drive away. So I'm going to do a little bit of research on what I need to do, what I need to do next to get this thing going. So we may have to come up a little bit because at this height we have some clearance issues on the back side of the fender. But once I have these fenders completely installed, I'll be able to come up in radius way out so we have plenty of room for travel. I just don't want to do that until we have the final mounting place, because as you can tell, we've changed this up so many times already. Alright, so I think this is going to be my ride height. I really love the height of the car. I think it looks really awesome. However, we have a very obvious issue, and that is that the tires just aren't going to clear. There's no way in the world these tires, these wheels, this setup is going to clear these fenders without any sort of camber. And normally you could throw like a camber bolt in and get by. You're not supposed to use them in the front, but you could get by with that until you got camber plates or whatever. This one, because of the way the strut is, it's all kind of one strut hub unit. You can't do that. So you only really have adjustment in the top, from the top hat, which is this thing right up here. And so anyway, I ordered some AE86 ones. That's the Corolla that everybody knows. They are supposed to be bolt-in, but even if they're not, I know we can make them work, but they won't be here for another 4 days. So this video is supposed to be done filming tomorrow. Obviously that's not going to be the case anymore. So if this is out of order, it's because of these. If it's not, then that means that I was up really late editing to get this thing out. So we're going to have to put this on hold for now until we get some camber adjustment up at the top. When we get that, we'll kick them all the way in. Probably do like 3 degrees of negative camber or something like that. And hopefully then the tire will clear no issue. For now, we're going to hang this up. I've got some more work to do on this car. I have some 3D printing and stuff to do on this car. I have some stuff to do to the rear suspension that I need to kind of tidy up before we start really driving it every day. So I'm going to go ahead and knock those things out and go to some other projects that I've got going on at the same time. And then we'll come back to this thing. Hopefully this video comes out on time. If not, this is why. Alright, see you guys in a bit. Alright, so it has been a few days since we lowered this car. I realized that the fenders were just not going to fit. So I did a little more research. I've got a new way to mount them, I think, that's going to help. But I also got these. These are camber plates. I got these off eBay for $100. They're for an AE86. And I heard in some places that a lot of the 86 stuff can swap out with this car. And so I was just hopeful that these would work. I'm still not entirely sure this is like a bolt-on thing, but I'm going to try it and just see how close we can get. I'm sure we can make something work. So I went ahead and did the other side because it required a bit more modification than I originally thought that it would. So I made sure I could kind of get it settled. I got it working. I got it fit pretty well. So now I'm going to show you what I did to get those top hats to work with this coilover setup. Check it out. So the first thing that I need to do, and this is not necessarily in any particular order, but these holes have to come out this way. So kind of get pushed that way. And that's going to help me get a little bit more camber out of it and I'm going to use a really scientific method here. It's basically just 1 finger width. Oh, these have been modified. The other side hadn't been modified, but this one has. Anyway, this side just comes out to right here, and then this one's got to go out and over. So we need to be about right here. Alright, so I have these pieces that I said earlier, they don't fit. They're threaded for the wrong size shock because these are for a Corolla that's almost 10 years newer. So I've got to figure out a way to make these work with the shocks that I have. And I went and bought some stuff, some bushings and different things to try to fix this problem. But I found out the solution's way simpler than that, and I'm going to show it to you. Alright, so with that, we have basically a spacer. It's the same one, so it still fits directly into our little pillow ball bushing bearing thing, right? Just like that. This will sit on top of the shock, and then we'll use our regular shock nut on top of that to sandwich everything together, and I think it's going to work really well. The only other thing that we're doing that might be a little bit different is, in my experience, when suspension has metal on metal interaction, you typically get some vibration. So I've got this little sheet, little piece of like rubber. We're going to throw that in between the top hat and this new, what's this thing called? Camber plate. This new camber plate. And hopefully that'll isolate our vibrations and give us very little to no noise. All right, let's throw all this together. Woo! Yeehaw! All right. Well, I know these openings that I made look really rough, and that's kind of okay for now. Assuming that this works, that I take it to my alignment shop and they say, yeah, we can get the toe out, then what I'll do is pull these off, weld some washers on where I want these to come through. That way there's just some more support there. You don't have these slots for stuff to try to move around. I think it'll be a lot better. For now though, we're gonna roll with this. So it looks like somebody was trying to get some camber maybe out of the stock struts, because they cut this kind of section out here and the holes had definitely been opened up. So I don't know what was going on there. But the deal is with a stock strut, you just can't move it enough. Even if you cut this whole hole out and tried to push it that way, it's never going to move enough to make any difference. So what I mean by that too is that, like, we're doing all this, right, cutting these slots, putting in these mounts that really move the top of the shock over a lot, making a lot of modification, and we're still only going to get about 2.5 degrees of camber out of this setup. Now that's more than we would have had. This one, what I've realized, based on, I've got a really crude way that I measure camber that'll get you kind of close, and based on that, this wheel is actually positive 0.5. So the way these things work, you may be able to tell, is this kind of ball joint thing is what allows you to change the top mounting position of your shock. So when you push it in, you gain camber. So this allows you to literally take the top of your shock and move it inward. That's not going to be enough for us, so what I'm going to do is we'll take these two and move them to the back. You'll notice there's 4 holes. That's to allow you to get a full range of adjustment out of it. A lot of your kind of higher end coilovers will have these made into them. Like I've got BC Racing, I think they're like BR, I'm not really sure, on the MR2, and it has this camber adjustment built into it, which is really nice. If you're doing a lot of modifications, it's probably worth it to go ahead and go for the brand that has camber adjustment into it, because this is a lot of work to adapt everything. But with this car, I mean, I don't really have that choice. For you guys that weren't here in the beginning of this build, we built these coilovers with a kit, kind of a universal type kit from Ground Control. We used shocks from the next generation Corolla, so not this generation but the next one, and then these top hats are from the generation after that, the AE86. So 3 generations of Corollas contributed to this coilover setup. And it's cool, but it's definitely not the most cost effective. I mean, these were $100. The coilover kit is $250 with the springs, and then the shock was $150 each. So, or no, they were $240 for two because they were on sale. So, you know, this isn't cheap stuff, but when you're doing modification like this, you really need all the adjustment you can get just to make it work. Cool. So yeah, it's not extreme, and that's good for tire wear. You can get pretty good wear on your tires, like pretty even-ish wear with camber, if the toe is correct. So guys that are low in your cars, if you're blowing through tires, I used to blow through tires on all my lowered cars, and I never understood. I just thought it was because I had camber in it, like 2 degrees, 3 degrees of camber. It really isn't going to mess up your wear that much if your toe is right. So get your toe done as soon as you do any sort of, like I just had the toe done on this car. I'm going to take it back and have it done again now that I've done this camber adjustment stuff, just to make sure these tires are pointed directly straight down the road. The MR2 has like 2 degrees. I think it's 1.5 or 2 degrees up front and then around the same in the back. And I've had completely even wear on all my tires because the toe is right. So get your toe adjusted. All right. I guess it's time to see if it's gonna work. So this is kind of hard to see because the tire on this car sticks out so far, but basically what camber is, what I'm talking about, is right here. If you look at this side of the tire, you can see it's kind of tilted inward towards the car a little bit. That's camber. And the reason for it is when you're going around a turn really fast, if your tire's tilted inwards and you go around the turn real fast, it kind of lays the tire down so that you get a full contact patch around the turn. So most race cars, most performance cars are going to have a little bit of negative camber in it. And then obviously you've seen the guys that kick it way, way in to get really wide wheels on their car. I think this is going to be enough for us. Plus, I told you guys earlier, I found a new way to mount these fenders based on another Corolla that I saw that I think is going to make these things turn and work flawlessly. Fingers crossed. Hopefully it works. Let's find out. There's a guy on Instagram that built a gray wide body Corolla, same generation as mine, but it's a coupe. It's very sick. I'll try to remember to put it somewhere on the video right here so you can go check it out. Very, very cool. And I was looking at his build, and instead of mounting his fenders like this, like I've been trying to do, he mounted his right here. So he cut them off at the body line, and it looks really good. The only downside of that is I already drilled a hole in the fender, which, you know, it is what it is. I can fix it. But he did this, and what that does, it does a lot of things. One, it keeps you from having to stretch the fender so much, so you get a good bit of space, which that looks like it's gonna work. Oh, I'm so excited. It breaks it off at this body line, which gives it a nice flow, and it gives you more room for your steer in, which has been the issue this whole time. Oh man, I think that's gonna work. That is wonderful, wonderful news. So yeah, I think the move here is gonna be mount this with some sheet metal screws for now and test drive it. Oh, that is just so close to hitting. Anyway, if it does scrub, which I expect it to, I'll come in here and trim this back, basically from here to here. Just cut it all the way back so it's real thin right there, and then hopefully that'll give the tire enough room to tuck up into there, and we'll be good. I can also lift the car up a little bit if I want to. I'd rather not, but if I need to, you know, that's no big deal. I am pretty low right now. I can't even get my finger like between the fender and the front wheel, so. All right. How are we looking, guys? Oh, I think we're gonna do it. I think we are gonna do it. Oh yeah, we're hitting over there. But I do think that's gonna clear. All right, we gotta do some more clearancing, but my son is crying. He just woke up from his nap. So I'm gonna take a break for a second. We will go work on the other side, do some clearancing on that fender to get the wheels to turn all the way. I think this is gonna work, guys. I'm so stoked. All right, be back. Now, when these things are installed kind of in their final place, I'm gonna come back and cut an even bigger chunk out. But right now I'm trying to do as little as possible because what I don't want is to cut outside of the fender somewhere and it just ruin everything. All right, let's drop it, see what happens. All right, right, so we got the front fenders fitted and I think they look really good. The right side is up a little bit higher than the left, but I measured everything off the body. I think it's probably a suspension thing. And when I say a little bit, I mean maybe 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch, probably not even 1/4 of an inch higher. So I'll adjust the suspension now based on these new wheel openings. The way I mounted them the first time when they were set really far back, it just didn't look right. The main bubble or the widest part of the fender was back here, and I don't know, I thought it looked funny. I was gonna leave it like that because I got the steering to work and it made sense, but I just didn't like the way it looked. So I kind of decided to go in between the first, he got a new toy. The first way we set it up where the fender was really like kind of favoring the front, and in between that and when it was favoring the back. And I'm pretty happy with how it came out and with the position. Now the widest part of the fender is pretty much over the center of the tire. It fits the new opening. The biggest issue is I had to cut a massive opening in this fender for these big, fat, super low offset tires or wheels to turn. And because of that, I had to kind of stretch the fender flare across that opening, and it really distorted the shape and distorted the opening. This opening, it's almost touching. Now, I could probably run this just like it is, but what I think I'm gonna do is raise the car up, because right now it's pretty much slammed. I could come down maybe another inch in suspension, or not an inch, probably like 1/2 of an inch. So this is pretty much slammed, and I kept that in mind when mounting these fenders. I'm gonna raise it up maybe 1/2 inch just to drive it around. I'm gonna clearance out the actual fender metal some more. I'm gonna cut a big radius out underneath this fender now that I know where the fender goes. And that should give us plenty of plenty of steering. It should make it a lot easier to drive and give us a lot of up and down. Now, if later in the future I want to go lower, all I have to do is drop this tire width down. There's a lot of things I could do, but if I drop the tire width down, that will allow this tire to tuck up underneath this fender and we'll be in business. But for now, I think this is going to work really well, and I think it's going to be plenty low enough, maybe too low, we'll see. Yeah, I think that's it. Now, I'm not going to leave these just sheet metal screwed on. That's just kind of how I get my mounting points. What I am going to do for this one is not riv nuts. I'm going to use just nuts and bolts with lock washers on the back and bolt it on that way. I think it's going to work really well. I also got some little like gasket to go on this. We'll see if we're going to use that or not. I'm not entirely sure. So I guess what we'll do now is switch to a time lapse or montage or something of me finishing up these front fenders, and then we will finally take this thing for a drive completed. Finally. Let's do it. Now, this is a little bit nerve-wracking. A lot of times when you run these screws in and really tighten this thing down, it changes shape. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst. I'm hoping that what it did is I pulled this in, it pushed the actual fender itself out. I hope that's what happened. Worst case scenario is it pulled it in, and then we've got to figure that out. So I'm gonna drop it down and check. Before I run these in and tighten them for good, basically forever, I'm going to drop this down again, check it, make sure we're good, and then we'll run everything in. So this is very similar to the MR2 in ride height. I can fit my hand in there just barely, right at like one finger at an angle, fitting into there. So that's great. That's gonna be a really healthy, I think, road height. The width looks good. Hopefully we don't make contact with this thing. All right, that's full lock to the right. I don't think we touched. Yeah, and we're okay. And cleared it. Yeah, man, that's good. That is really good. That's really hard to do, so I'm glad that we did it. Now, I do have some more material that we can take out if we need to, but I think that is gonna work. Yeah, man. Very happy with this. Another thing this does is I had a lot of like rigidity kind of lost from the fender when I cut that big section out. When you put this back onto it, now we gain our rigidity back. The fender feels really good. Let's do the other side. So some of you guys may be wondering what the future of this car looks like. It's obviously not done, like completely restored and new, but I want to be able to drive it and I want to take a break from working on it. So we've got literally boxes of parts for this car that will go into this, and I'm going to do some videos on it as time goes on. So you guys will stay up to date on it as I drive it and find out things I want to change or fix or whatever. But for now, we're calling it done. All right, this project is done. I think this thing came out incredibly good. Now, I say done lightly. We've still got a few things we've got to do to wrap this thing up, but for now, I'm gonna hit pause kind of on the build. Everything else is kind of boring. It's finishing work, and it's stuff that I'll do as I drive the car and feel like I need it. But for now, I just want to enjoy this thing. This thing has been up longer than I thought it would be. It's been about 3 months, 2.5 months since we started this build, and this thing looks so mean. I'm so stoked with how it came out. I think lowering the front and cambering the tires in 2.5 degrees was the right move. It looks very, very good, and it works. I just steered it around a little bit. Nothing hits, nothing rubs. And I think we can even drop it a little bit lower if I decide to with a smaller tire. So like a 175, 185, we'll tilt that tire sidewall in and get us a little bit lower if I want to go that route. For now, I'm very happy with how this thing looks. I'm so stoked about it. I cannot wait to drive it. All right, so this is the last video of this build, and we can't leave it at this. We've got to get this car on the road, and I need to get some shots of it on the road. So I'm gonna call some people, see if I can find some people to help me shoot this car while it's driving, because you need 3 people to get rolling shots, and that's kind of hard to come by sometimes on like a Monday. So we're gonna get some rolling shots. I'm gonna drive this thing around and enjoy it for a minute, and then we'll go on to the next build. Well, you guys won't see that yet, but I'm very excited. This is actually like, I don't get that excited about finishing cars. I'm pumped, I'm stoked that it's done because it's done. I've got another car that I've already bought, and it's waiting. Ooh, is it in the camera? So it's waiting like right over there. It should be a little bit blurry for you guys, so you can't tell what it is. And I've been ordering parts for it for like 2 weeks. I'm trying to get everything before I even start the build. So in 2 weeks from now, maybe a week from now, we're gonna start that build. And that's all I can think about right now. So I love this Corolla and I'm gonna drive it. It's gonna be fun, but all I can think about is the next build. Anyway, that's enough talking. Let's drive this thing. Alright, so we're back in the car. I couldn't get rolling shots. I couldn't get enough people lined up to actually get the rolling shots, so I hope that what I got was good enough. We're gonna drive it now. Now, I did take my sons for a ride in this car. I've got the car seats back here, but as you can see, the car seats are just way too big. So I drove them real quickly just so they could have a ride. I'll cut to some footage of that in just a minute. But if you have some smaller car seats, or you know of some smaller car seats that'll fit in these older cars, please let me know, because these are just too bulky. I don't feel good about it. So you can link them or send them to me in an email or whatever. All right, let's drive it. think the next step for this car is going to be a cam, so I kind of have to decide what route am I going to go. Am I going to turbo it, or am I going to build a motor? I do love turbos. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy it like it is because it is very fun. I've learned with this build is that shocks are so important. Like, having good shocks is important. And people tell you that all the time on forums and stuff. The shocks don't really change the way the car looks, and so I think a lot of people write them off. But man, as far as enjoyment goes, this thing is so much more enjoyable because the suspension is doing what it's supposed to do. This is awesome. What a great thing. What a great, great little car. Oh, that's a good sound. I tell you what, old 4-cylinders, I don't know what it is about them. I don't know if it's the carburation or if it's like maybe a longer stroke. I'm not sure what it is, but they sound so good, so much better. Less buzzy, I guess.